Go ahead. Thank you.
Okay. So, first of all, I would like to, wish all the participants and our esteemed speakers a very good evening. We on this webinar on safeguarding your business, I, Bhavik Uttam Chandani, on behalf of Devex, welcome you all to this highly insightful webinar. So before we get into the itinerary of the event, I would like to request all the participants to turn their audios on mute and the videos to be disabled. The chat session will temporarily be disabled from this point onwards, and we will enable it for Q&A, and you can line up your questions in the chat window. I would request the audience to keep the Q&A crisp and concise, due to the time constraint. And I would try my best to put forth your questions that we had received in advance for the panelists. Moving ahead with the flow, we'll touch upon the various aspects of strategic business continuity plans, the competency mapping, and the organizational work culture you need to safeguard your businesses to sustain in this complex world. So we have associated with My Life Coach. Today we have with us the managing partners of My Life Coach to strategically coach us to achieve our organizational goals. So we have with us Mr. Abhimanyu Datta and Ms. Hiral Shah, both being the managing partners of MLC, that is My Life Coach. So Mr. Abhimanyu Datta is an esteemed success coach, specializing in psychological re-engineering to help you achieve your goals. He's an expert at customizing and implementing the organizational training programs that go in line with individual business objectives. And then we have Ms. Hiral Shah, which she has a vast industry experience of almost 2 decades in various areas of strategic human resource management. She has managed more than 2,500 employees across the IT and ITES and BFSI industries. So, considering that we have such esteemed and experienced panelists, it would be really great if, we can have a brief highlight from them on their journey at My Life Coach. So, Abhimanyu, if you can, share throw some light on it.
It's been an exciting journey since last 2 years we started this journey. We only had one aim, that we wanted to help people in their lives. Hiral, coming from the corporate background, she had a lot of things in her mind, and she knew what the corporate need and why the corporate is not focusing on certain things. And today we see that the world is actually moving towards that thing. So we had a lot of ups and downs, but we are still happy of what we have achieved till now. It's been a great journey. And we have met so many great people. We have been able to share our value with so many people that we only feel grateful to God for giving us this opportunity to be part of My Life Coach and helping people around, sharing our knowledge. What do you say, Hiral?
Yes, definitely. Helping people around, sharing our knowledge, and also helping people to cope with these challenging times by giving them the right perspectives to look at. So definitely, the journey has been magical, and we are really grateful for all the opportunities that we are getting to help people transform their lives.
Wow, that's amazing. So, I mean, considering the experience that you have, and the topics that we have today from our speakers, I mean, it's a really vast topic, and, selecting this topic is a very bold decision because there are a lot of things that need to be covered, and with a lot of responsibilities, we have many expectations from our audience. So, I think without further delay, I would like the speakers to take over the session. And I believe they have a presentation for all our audience, so which will comprise of various models related to this strategic human resource management. And I would like the speakers to take over the session and enlighten us with their expertise.
Thank you so much, Bhavik. Good evening, all of you. As Bhavik introduced, my name is Abhimanyu Datta from My Life Coach, managing partner, and my partner Hiral Shah. We have also received your questions and we have consolidated it. So we have made our presentation in a way that it answers your questions in the presentation itself. But we will still be happy to answer your questions in the Q&A session. We have a lot to cover, so I'll be trying to give as much as possible. So the first 10 to 15 minutes, I'll be speaking for the business continuity plan. Then Hiral will take over for the next 15 minutes, where she will talk about the competency mapping, the HR strategy frameworks, and the office culture post COVID-19. And then we open the floor for the Q&A session. Before I really start up my presentation, I really wanted to ask you this thing. Many people, when we talk to many business owners, they said, who knows what will happen in future. We never expected 9/11 to happen. We never expected the floods that happened in Mumbai in 2005 or the Bhuj earthquake or even the COVID-19. COVID-19 was unexpected from any angle that we never thought that will happen, and will have to shut down our businesses for more than like 50 days. The whole world is shut down. But as we spoke to business owners, we realized that many business owners never really thought about it, that what if this happens? What if you have to shut down your business because of certain situation which is not in your control and you're not able to run your business? Today, most of the schools, colleges, businesses, you can say everything, count everything, including public transport, which is started right now, but it's not in full fledged. So the special trains running, so everything is shut down. So we never thought that everything will be shut down and working from home will become a new normal. Now, what I'm going to talk to you about today is a beautiful tool that many people don't do it. And if you had done it in the first place, you would have had a plan right now to run your business and still earn profit, or at least to cover up your expenses. And that is, I'm talking about business continuity plan. It's like an insurance that you pay for and you really hope that you don't have to really claim it. But it's like a security. So what is business continuity plan? So as I said earlier, you never expect what will happen in this world. Nothing is sure, nothing is permanent in the world, everything is changing. So business continuity plan is nothing but a plan that you plan in advance. You think of all the possible scenarios that can force you to stop your business or your business operation, and you think of possible ways to cover up new things, how you can keep running your business in case anything such thing happens, so that you don't face losses and your business is continuing. So as the definition says, it's basically a process that outlines the potential impact of disaster situations. So COVID is a disaster. It's a health disaster. We had 9/11. It was a terror disaster. We had a natural disaster. So it creates policies to respond to them and help businesses recover quickly so that they can function as usual. The main goal, the main goal of business continuity plan is to protect your personal assets and most importantly income flow, which is not present today, but during and after an emergency. So right now, what you're facing right now is kind of an emergency situation where businesses are not running. Few businesses are running because they fall in the essentials category, but there are also lots of terms and conditions which they are really grappling up right now, and they're just huffing and puffing to really make sure that they are following the rules and they're able to run their business. So what are the emergency situations when we talk about in regards to BCP? So the corona, yes, any health pandemic which forces the world to shut down is an emergency situation. Any kind of fire, flood, storms, tornadoes, typhoons, tsunami, volcanoes, any kind of terrorist attack, intruder, shooter, cyber attack, any employee injury, change in the chain of command. When you speak of change in the chain of command, that means your top management changes suddenly and there's a lot of replacements out there. Or maybe long absence due to illness or death of your CEO, CXO, director, or head of department, or the owner of a small business firm. All right. So as we speak about business continuity plan, its goal is to safeguard your income. It's a process which you will think of all the possible scenarios and the steps and the guidelines that you can take in case of such an emergency thing happens, so that your flow of income doesn't stop. And the flow of income doesn't stop in case the threat becomes a reality. So you just plan out for those things which you hope doesn't become a reality for all the threats. But in case it happens, you have a SOP, a standard operating procedure in your hand, where you know what activities you need to done, who has to do what to make sure that your business is running and your income flow doesn't stop. So a business continuity plan includes, what does it include? So it's basically a tailor-made plan for every organization, as one plan won't fit everybody. So you have to tailor make it. So for example, a business continuity plan for a company like Tata would be very different for a company like say Pepsi, or even a smaller company, or a textile company, or a very small organization firm which just has 5-10 employees, maybe say an IT firm. So it depends on the goal of the organization, the type of business, scale of businesses, and lots of other factors as well. Now, what does it basically include? Now, this is very important. If you have paper and pen, just note it down very quickly, or you can just take a screenshot of the screen. So, business continuity plan should include the policy, the purpose, and scope. So, the purpose should be to cover all the possible threat scenarios in which your business can shut down. You are forced to shut down your business. What are the goals and the objectives of it? The key roles and responsibilities of the personnel involved. All right, risk mitigation plan. So in case any of your employees fall sick or someone is actually injured grievously, then who will be the person who will be working in place of them or coming in their shoes and filling up their responsibilities as well? What are the list of tasks required to keep your operations flowing? As you will be preparing the standard operating procedures for making sure that your operations keep flowing irrespective of any situation or whether your employees are present or new employees have come in. Explanation of where to go during an emergency or a natural emergency like say earthquake. Information on data backups and site backup, because a lot of businesses are not dependent on IT. So the IT backup is also a very great important aspect for every business. Your maintenance protocols, coordination with local emergency personnel, contact information of your management personnel should be available easily. All right, so these are the things that come into a business continuity plan. So it's a document which you will make, which will have its policy scope, and you cover all the possible threat scenarios in which your operations can shut down. Now, businesses really get any kind of advance notice, that we never knew that Janta curfew will turn out into lockdown 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, and then another lockdown 4.0. We never had any kind of idea. We never got any advance notice for any kind of disaster. 26/11 happened, we didn't have any kind of advance notice. All right. So an organization can struggle to recover, or worse, can go out of business for good if it does not have a plan to really deal with any disaster situation or when any disaster strikes. So the good news is that the organizations can really help protect themselves from the consequences of the business continuity plan. So basically, for example, when 26/11 happened, अभी एक छोटा ठेला वाला है जो CST स्टेशन के बाहर अपना सैंडविच का स्टॉल लगाता है. Terrorist attack हुआ, he lost his goods, or maybe he got injured. But if he had prepared a business continuity plan where he would have groomed his son into the operations, the business wouldn't have stopped, income would have been coming in. Or maybe he could have groomed his wife. That's a very small example. Or for example, when Taj Hotel was attacked due to the 26/11 strikes, they could have trained the other people or the people on the bench or the waiter staff to work in the kitchen and vice versa, to work on the reservation desk because they had one of their major chefs hospitalized and other few staff injured as well. This is a small example of how business continuity plan can really make sure that your business keeps running. Speaking in terms of COVID-19, now most of the business, except for the businesses involved in the essential food items and medicines, that's all businesses are closed. Unless and until you have a good supply chain model, you really can't do any business because you can't really open shops. So it's basically only home delivery plan. So if you had that plan, you could have easily done it. See, so like I'm talking about, a business continuity plan is like an insurance. All right. And even if you do actual insurance, okay, there are various types of business insurance available. It always doesn't cover every cost associated with the incident. It might cover you certain percentage of it. All right, but still you have to face off. For example, your car insurance doesn't cover each and every penny that you give when you give your car for repair after an accident. It just covers so that you don't get a huge financial hit. And many businesses in India don't have any kind of insurance. That's the biggest loophole or the biggest weaknesses of the businesses as well as individuals in the front of financial planning. So when we speak about in terms of business, you have to check what kind of insurance you can really take for your business. So it helps your business to be more prepared to provide acceptable service after the disaster and to preserve its image and revenue. Right now, most of the businesses are making sure that they are active on social media so that their brand image doesn't dilute, people doesn't forget them. So it's like a disaster recovery plan. It's a plan which can help you, make really be ready to make sure that you're not losing revenue even after the disaster. The most important thing is how do you make a business continuity plan? So there are 5 steps to it. So the first step is you form the business continuity management team. So basically, you will have the top people from your organization who would become a part of the business continuity management team. They would conduct a business impact analysis. So what they will do is they'll take every threat scenario and they will conduct a business impact analysis. So for example, अगर flood आ जाता है, पूरा जगह the whole godown gets flooded. What will be the impact? How much loss we are looking at? Then how we can restart the operation? With any kind of appliances like computers or printers will get affected by it? Do we have any backup? They would conduct all these kind of impact analysis. They would identify the resources, come up with business plans to cover the gap analysis. So, for example, now you conduct a business impact analysis for yourself. You would also conduct a business impact analysis for your vendors as well. Most businesses are somehow dependent on only one or two vendors. आपने कभी उनका analysis किया है कि भाई उनके ऊपर कुछ ऐसी आपदा आ जाती हो, they face any kind of such trouble, how would they be able to recover? So you also make sure that you have other vendors ready so that your business doesn't stop. Alright, so that is what you say, identifying resources. So identifying resources in terms of vendor, identifying resources in terms of your employees. So for example, if your head manager gets injured or he has to go on a long medical leave, is his junior ready to take his spot and really do the responsibilities and do the work that this manager is doing? So that is identifying the resources plan. Then you explore and you implement recovery strategies, the plan that you make. So basically you choose one day in a year where you actually implement those strategies and to see. So it's basically a dry run of your BCP plan to make sure that everything is running up and running. You test the results, okay, and you make improvements, continuous improvements. So before COVID, we knew we can have either terrorist attacks or natural tragedies like fire, flood, tornadoes, cyclones, or maybe too much of heat. We never thought of this health scare, but now businesses will have to really involve this aspect as well and make strategies accordingly to it so that your business doesn't stop. All right. So what I wanted to talk to you about here in business continuity plan is that it's basically a plan that you have prepared for your own business. So that if अगर कोई tragedy आपके business में हो जाती है, तो environment में होती है, any kind of natural disaster that happens which forces you to shut down your business, you will have a plan ready so that from next day you just have to take out the plan, you have to implement the plan. So the time that you will take to recover is very less. You lose less time and you don't lose too much of income. So for suppose example, if a building has a fire and in normal circumstances when an organization does not have any business continuity plan, it might take 1 month to recover and start their operation. But if you had a BCP in place and if you had identified another place, it would just take 2-3 days to shift to your business and start operations immediately. So now just imagine for a minute, what if you had imagined any such kind of scenario and you had made such a plan ready where you would know key social distancing would be made or how you would run your business or what kind of business strategy you would use if suddenly you have to shut down your business or what kind of you could go to the other business as well. What if your business was still generating some kind of income in this present situation which was at least covering up your expenses to certain extent? Wouldn't be great for you? What if you are not worried about the future situation and the present situation? So all these questions get answered, all your worries get away when you design this document, business continuity plan. And it's a very simple plan. You just have to focus on the goals. You make and conduct an impact analysis. You focus on the gaps, and then you make a plan to fill up all those gaps, and then continue ahead. All right. That's from me right now. Now, please welcome my partner Hiral Shah, who will be taking you ahead and explaining you about the strategic HR for frameworks and policies and also the work culture. Hiral, please welcome.
Yes. Thank you, Abhimanyu. So, hi everyone. The topic is Introduction to Competency Mapping. and we'll be taking you through the overview. It's quite an exhaustive topic, but I will give you an overview of all the different factors and parameters that are included in competency mapping, and essentially why we require it and how it can be done. So first of all, we'll start with why competency mapping. Why is it required by companies? So competency mapping, basically it affects a lot of decisions in the company, and these decisions include recruitment, training, talent and performance management. So basically when recruiters use competency-based questionnaires, the competencies are already defined, and along the lines, the recruiters are using those competencies to make decisions with regards to whether to hire or not to hire candidates. When there are fully developed competency models, these can also be used for job postings. So along with the job description, this is a very exhaustive document that can be used, and it is a better chance to filter the proper candidates that you require, the closely matched candidates. Second pointer where this helps is it's training and development. So when you have a set of defined competencies, you can structure your learning pathways in regards to those competencies. In the current times, we have understood how important it is to have a strong, robust online training system. So these competencies can also be used to create personalized learning journeys, which combine the digital learning, which is the online learning, the exhaustive model, including the modules, assessment, and everything, and also learning via social media. So social learning interventions, because people are very active on social media, especially in these times. And this is going to be continued. This is going to be picked up in the coming times as well. Next is the talent and performance management. So we define what a success would look like in a particular organization depending on the performance of the workforce. Now, if the competency model defines this, then this benchmark helps the HR department to categorize the function of each job with the goals, and the talent of the employees can be developed. So this is used for effective performance management as well. Moving on, we also have competency is very important for performance appraisals as well, because this provides a framework to assess the employees in the performance review. Both the employer and employee have a clearly defined list of behaviors and skills on each competency. And this can be used in various tools which include manager evaluations, assessments, and 360-degree feedback. And the results of the same can be communicated to the employee. And one more point is the promotions and career advancement. So post the performance appraisals, important decisions like who needs to be promoted and what is the career advancement strategy needs to be taken. So taking a simple example, if there is a software engineer who wants to move on to the next level of senior software engineer, he needs to know which proficiency levels he needs to hit for each competency in order to get to the next level. So this should be clear and transparent for all the employees. Moving on, we basically talked about why competency mapping. Now we're going to talk about what exactly is a competency, defining a competency, and what is competency mapping exactly. So competencies are basically the qualities that an individual possesses, internal qualities. And these are a combination of the skills, knowledge, abilities, and personal attributes. And these attributes put together, they contribute to the superior employee performance. The employee is able to perform in a better way, a superior way, and ultimately it results in organizational success. This enables the individual to deliver superior performance in any given job, role, or situation. So we have defined the competency. Now we'll move on to the types of competencies. So competencies basically are categorized into core competencies, behavioral competencies, technical competencies, functional competencies, and leadership competencies. I'll be taking you through a little bit in brief about each competency. So the core competency basically is the baseline skills that are required by any organization, and this will vary from company to company. But this is basically it's basically a Bible for any organization. It's like a foundation stone on which the organization is built. So these competencies are must-haves for any organization and for all the employees of the organization. So basically, we can say that, for example, if it's an international parcel delivery company, then the core competency would be logistics. Taking another example, an employee within this company, the core competency for this employee would probably be on-time delivery of customer parcels. So this is the core competency, and communication skills, teamwork, influencing, these are the kind of competencies we look at when we talk about core competencies. Second is behavioral competencies, and they are basically the softer skills of the employees. So what are the soft skills that the employee possesses? Probably teamwork, dedication. These are the kind of soft skills. Technical competencies are concerned with the use of IT systems and computers that an employee may possess, how effectively they are comfortable with using the IT systems. Moving on to the next, there are functional competencies. Now, functional competencies are job-specific skills and behaviors that are unique for each role. So, for example, if we take the example of an accountant, his ability would be to analyze a specific type of financial data in order to prepare reports. This is his functional competency. Whereas if we take the example of a restaurant waiter, then the waiter should be able to effectively handle customer complaints. So he should be adept at that. So that is a functional competency he possesses. So it describes what behaviors or skills need to be performed for employee to be the top performer in the organization. And leadership competencies are basically bringing out the leadership skills within an employee, how effectively the employee is able to manage teams, how effectively he is able to lead people. These are supervisory and management related roles, and they include the behaviors that include decision-making abilities for people. Moving forward, a very important part in the competency mapping process is the entire process itself, the steps in competency mapping. There are 5 steps: classification of competencies, definition of competencies, identifying behavioral indicators, identifying the proficiency levels, and definition of proficiency levels. We'll run through each in a little bit detail. Classification is basically, for example, if you're classifying competencies on functional and behavioral aspect, these are the 2 categories which will help you develop the overall competency framework. So if an organization has decided that customer experience is the primary competency that they want to focus on, then they will classify this category as customer centricity. Now we move on to the definition of competencies. This provides an exact picture as to what set of skills and abilities are required to do the job. So for example, we are taking one competency here, which the sales team requires. It is a functional competency for the sales team and very essential for all levels, which is called drive for sales results. This is defined as the ability for an individual to achieve the results in sales by focusing on the formulated sales objectives. This is the second step. We are done with the second step. The third step is very, very crucial and critical for the entire process, because we are defining the behavioral indicators for the competency process, for an entire competency framework. And what we are going to do is one needs to demonstrate these behaviors to show that one has the competency for drive for sales results. So I have put across a table wherein there are a list of behavioral indicators which will give you an idea about it. The functional competencies drive for sales results, which we already defined. Behavioral indicators are these indicators. The person establishes personal sales objectives that are highlighted clearly, ambitious, realistic, and directly applicable. So this is the hard model, the 4 parameters defined. Second is the person is proactive and takes the required initiatives to achieve personal sales objectives. Third is the person can identify concrete results of the sales activities undertaken. takes personal responsibility for achieving sales goals, monitors the progress of own sales results, thinks out of the box to achieve sales goals, and is able to manage and overcome objections. So these are the things that the person demonstrates. These are the behaviors that the person demonstrates. Then we can effectively say that the person has drive for sales results. There is a definition of proficiency level also, the fourth column, which you can see, and it is put at 3. I'll be explaining to it in the coming slide. Now, fourth step is identifying proficiency levels. So in every department, every person would be at a separate competency level, and this needs to be defined. And it is very critical that within any job role, department or level of grade of employees, the desired proficiency level, which is called the DPL, is defined. Now, in this particular example, we have put a DPL of 3. It is on a scale of 1 to 5, where 5 is the maximum level of proficiency and 1 is the minimum level of proficiency. So the definition of proficiency levels, which we said is 1 to 5, and the 1 to 5 levels are going to be defined in the coming table. Okay, so proficiency level 1 is novice. Novice is a beginner. So this person is struggling in demonstrating relevant behaviors of competency. The level 2 is a learner, which the learner knows and understands. However, the person may commit mistakes in applying sometimes. Level 3 is a practitioner. So this is an intermediate level. This person is the mid-level, knows, understands, and applies with a fair degree of consistency. Level 4 is an expert. The person not only knows, understands, and applies, but also innovates. So he's doing out-of-the-box thinking. So that puts him at an expert level. Level 5 is the master. So master is a role model for the competency. We look at this person. He is an expert in the competency. He can coach others. He can teach others how to be adept at this particular competency. So these are the 5 levels. I would like to share a small story with you with regards to these 5 levels and give you a better understanding about it. So there is a company, say for example, Mr. Suresh. He's facing an issue of lot of attrition in his company, and he's not able to hire the desired people. So he speaks to his friend, Mr. Jagmohan, who has a very prosperous company and his employees are very loyal. So he asked Mr. Jagmohan what differently has he done. So Mr. Jagmohan says that basically after analyzing your situation, I do understand that you have a lot of people at the junior levels and you are facing a lot of attrition at junior levels, and you need to have a mix of employees at all levels, especially level 3, 4 and 5, because this is your entire succession planning strategy in place. So if your employees are groomed, employees at level 1 and level 2 are groomed to take on the responsibility of next levels, then you definitely have a loyal workforce. And that is what I have done for my company. I have done the competency mapping for my company, and I do have a mix of employees at all levels, and I do have a sustainable and a manageable talent pipeline, which is a loyal workforce for me. So this was a small story shared with you basically to understand the importance of competency mapping and to understand the benefits that this particular exercise provides. Now, the next part that we go to is the categories of competency model. The categories of competency model are basically divided into 5 categories: core competency model, functional competency model, job or role competency model, leadership competency model, and customer competency model. This is how a core competency model looks like, giving you the different competencies which are the core of any company. Like I said, it's a basic level of competency, the foundation of all competencies, and all employees should display these behaviors: self-management, performance management, and all these are listed in the next slide. So examples of core competency are customer focus, how well the person serves the customers, Performance management, how well the performance is managed for each employee, whether he or she is consistent on his performance rating. Planning and use of resources, the office resources, as well as the people resources, the teams below them, how well they manage. How well is the communication between different teams? How well is the person able to put his or her own perspective into strategic thinking for the company and managing change? How well the person manages self, the leadership qualities, and how well the person is able to work in teams. So teams and partnership working. The next is functional competency model. Basically, functional competencies are the examples of some functional competencies can be certain programming languages, data analysis skills, record keeping skills, grant writing skills, etc. So these are specific to a particular department of your company. Here we have taken a particular example, like for example, we have taken the roles of an HR professional for functional competencies. There can be a technical specialist, advisor, strategic partner, and leader. Functional competencies for all would be different. I have given you here the general competencies for an advisor role. What should they possess? Just to give you an understanding about it. So creative thinking, creative innovative thinking, client engagement, managing change in a very effective manner, decision making, flexibility, how good the person is at influencing people and negotiating with people, project management, and reasoning skills. The next are job or role competency model. So unlike a functional model, the job role model includes, they needs to be clearly defined. These skill sets are chosen usually basically based on someone who is performing very well within that role and is already demonstrating those behaviors and those competencies. But this may differ from department to department. Leadership competency model helps you when you're hiring leadership within the company. Some of the key competency models are self-management, development, coaching and mentoring, and understanding and enforcing ethics. And then there is a custom competency model. It depends on, this is a tailor-made model basically. So this may suit your organization, but it may be different for different organizations. So this is a mix and match, and this is a custom model that you create for your company. This example of the job or role competency model, specific roles of advisors are advisor beginner, which is advisor apprentice, advisor practitioner, and advisor expert. So basically, what kind of strategic ability and familiarity the person has with HR operations, which stage of his career the person is at, and a beginner, intermediate, or advanced as an HR leader, and how expert he is in terms of stepping onto the shoes of the next person. Now, the benefits of competency mapping, coming back to the story that I had narrated to you with regards to Mr. Suresh and Mr. Jagmohan, you can take that as a perspective. Identifying the key competencies will help hiring and promotion decisions very, very easy. Apart from the appraisal process, this also helps filtering the right talent for the competencies. When competency-based questionnaires are included in interviews, you can avoid expensive hiring mistakes, especially if you're hiring people at senior levels and if you're not following a competency model. There's a possibility that you may end up hiring a misfit or a wrong hire, and it may take a hit on your budget. And this also helps in shortening the recruitment cycle because you already have the framework in place with you. So these are the benefits. And also, this sets a concrete direction for the performance management of the workforce, which is aligned with the goals and strategies of organization. It enables the HR department to have the employee ability and skill understanding. It enables L&D needs as well, identifying L&D needs, skills and behaviors. And it helps employees to keep track of what other employees are doing in terms of strategy and planning. And it provides a consistent and fair system of measurement. So basically reducing the cost of hiring, helping you to have a sustainable talent management strategy in place, helping you in succession planning, which I talked to you about in the story. And also very, very important in the coming times, in the times of COVID, we know that small and medium business owners, they may be struggling in terms of technology, but if a business owner wants their business to run on autopilot, wherein they don't fear that an employee might quit suddenly or go on a long leave, it really helps for an employer to set their business on autopilot by doing this thing, by doing the competency mapping. Now we come towards the end of the presentation, and I would like to take you through what kind of office culture we're looking at post COVID-19. Even after the lockdown is lifted, or even after the disease is contained, there's always a danger of a relapse. So small, medium organizations definitely need to pull up their socks in terms of having an online culture of work. They need to have a strong tech support wherein they can manage work from home, which many of the employees, many of the companies may not be having. They need to develop their systems accordingly. They need to have a standard operating procedure for work from home. So, which details each and every activity for the work from home activities. They need to have online meetings. Communication is a two-way street. So online meetings is very important. And one more last important thing is that while communicating through WhatsApp or through other mediums, the message may be diluted, and sometimes people may think that it is a harassment kind of thing. So there needs to be a code of conduct for anti-harassment as well for the office culture. We have come towards the end of the presentation now. And we have taken you through, Mr. Abhimanyu has taken you through the business continuity plan, and I've covered the competency mapping and the office culture. And we now open the floor for the Q&A. Right, Abhimanyu?
Yes, sure. So please, if you have any questions, let us know. आपके जो भी सवाल हैं, हम उनको जवाब देने की पूरी कोशिश करेंगे.
Thank you, Abhimanyu and Hiral, for this wonderful presentation. It was really insightful for all of the audience. So, I have a question for Hiral.
Yes.
Since, I like to follow the bottoms-up approach, the most recent topic that we touched upon was organizational culture.
Yeah.
So, in my understanding, there are two types of culture in every organization. One is very open, supportive, and risk-taking. And another is close or structured and task oriented. I would not get into the right and the wrongs of it, but how does an organization decide what parameters to consider while choosing the right culture for them?
How does an organization decide whether the culture should be open or the culture should be closed and it should be very bureaucratic?
Yes, on what parameters should they decide this?
See, basically the parameters are definitely the changing times. So first of all, you need to take into account the changing times. Most of the organizations, and especially if you look at the Indian organizations, many organizations are business houses who have been running for probably around 60, 70 years or even more than that. So some of them are following a bureaucratic culture, but newer companies, newer divisions that are getting integrated in these companies, they are understanding is there's a lot of disturbance in the background. I'm sorry. Okay. So the newer divisions that are getting integrated into these old organizations and business houses, they are understanding the importance of having an open culture. Because and currently the workforce, we are moving towards a very, very young workforce. And the values that the workforce knows with all the social media attention and with all the social media knowledge that they are getting, and the current culture presently, this culture believes in having an open and transparent workforce rather than having a bureaucratic workforce. So the present times are dynamic. The currently changing times and the dynamic times forces organizations to bring about the change in their cultures. Because if you don't accept change, then change will definitely turn you around. So it's better to embrace change rather than getting pushed and turned around by it.
Okay, Bhavat, just give me a minute. I have a question from Alicia. So she is saying that BCP is prepared to safeguard the business for one situation at a time. No, BCP is prepared to safeguard your business for all the situations. So you take in all the disasters that can happen. हर disaster को you take in with context with all the situations that can happen and make a separate plan for everything. So now she says, for example, we now have a pandemic. Now we have activated our BCP plan. But what's next if some other disaster comes up like earthquake, flood during the pandemic? how can we tackle such situations through BCP? Is BCP only sufficient? Um, okay, so see, क्या होता है Alisha? Most of the time, what it happens is the you'll have to take in all the permutations and combinations. All right, now what you have said is very true that anything that happened, you can also have floods or earthquake during the pandemic as well. But it's a continuous document that keeps on getting updated. So it's not like you have made it once and it will remain a plan for next 10 years. It will continuously keep on updating. So whatever situation you face every now and then, you can always, update it with the new situation. All right. I hope that answers your question. Please, Bhavik, you can continue with your questions, please.
Yes. So next would be, we have a question from Chinkal. That would be, I think, Hiral can address it.
Okay. What is the question?
So, Chinkal was asking how behavioral aspects can affect the marking in, core competencies in terms of training module.
How behavioral aspects can affect the core competencies.
Yes.
So definitely the behavioral aspects would affect the core. Yes. Did someone want to ask something?
No, he'll continue.
Okay. Behavioral aspects basically are the behaviors that you exhibit on a day-to-day basis. And this definitely affects the training model and the core competencies also. Whenever you are writing a competency, you need to take into account the task that the person needs to accomplish. And it follows a KSAP model. So it's a knowledge, skills, abilities, and the personal attributes. So all this forms the behaviors. And basis this, if the competency is written, so it will be a very effective way to cover the behavioral aspects also, and the same can be integrated into the training model.
Bhavik?
Hello.
Yes, Bhavik.
Yes, I think that was a very precisely answered question. So, since we were talking about, the organization and work culture, Hiral, how do you think the large organization should foster the culture of innovation? Since there's already a development of a culture existing in any organization. So, how can organizations transform themselves or their culture to foster a culture of innovation to, kickstart their journeys post a pandemic or any kind of a complex situation?
Okay, that's a good question. Organizations can definitely foster a culture of innovation, even large organizations. What basically they can do is, this is something related to the engagement of the employees. So if they are fostering innovation on a day-to-day basis by engaging with employees, what they can do is they can conduct short surveys wherein the questions are pointed towards innovative thinking. It can be a short questionnaire, which is 5 to 6 questions, and these surveys should be to the point and precise, and this should be done on a regular basis. And through the surveys, you'll be able to gather the ideas, and definitely one of the best ideas or few of the best ideas can be picked up, and they can be merged with the organization culture, and slowly this will encourage more innovative thinking within employees and within the organization.
Okay, that was great. Thank you, Hiral. Abhimanyu, when it comes to kickstarting their businesses, so like Alisha was also asking that that every company has a contingencies ready for them, and but a contingency plan is not just enough. No one would have predicted that corona would be coming. And you, while giving a presentation, were talking about a one plan for all of the employees. So how is that feasible when it's a large organization and it's a very departmental organization, or let's say even if it's a lateral structure, how is it possible for all of the blocks to individually a plan that caters to all of these blocks?
Okay. See, Bhavik, this document is a very dynamic document. It's not that you have written it once and it remains in print forever. All right. you have to consider each situation separately. You have to have a plan for each situation, for each disaster separately. All right. So every disaster will have its own specific condition. All right. For example, now we are talking about pandemic. So let's talk about pandemic. Many businesses are now forced to shut their shops. In few places of Navi Mumbai, specifically in Panvel municipal region, which comes in New Bombay, there is a rule that certain shops will open on certain days of the week, but they have to ensure that social distancing is there. All right. Now this is a dynamic rule which no one was aware, neither the government was aware. Now the organization will have to make a change. All right. So they have to make sure that outside their shops they have made these circles and make sure that not more than 5 people stand at one time in front of their shop. So what I mean to say is that it's not 100% foolproof plan, but at least it helps you to really understand and stand from day one instead of just being confused, being haywire. All right, and you are not knowing what to do for the next 2-3 days, and then you start picking up your things slowly. So you have, instead of losing your precious days just after any kind of disaster, you really know that what plan needs to be really activated in kind of any situation. So every situation, every disaster will have separate plans and separate step of actions for every kind of employees and every department as well. I hope that answers your question, Bhavin.
Yes, that was a wonderfully explained and articulate answer, Abhimanyu. Next, I would ask Hiral. You were talking about the metrics where you were describing that there's a need of behavioral indicators for every kind of behavioral competency. How can managers very efficiently describe or state these behavioral indicators for every level that they have?
So basically, like I mentioned earlier, that what are the kind of organization goals that you have? What are the roles and responsibilities that you're looking at? And when you're following a KSAP model, so you're looking at the task that needs to be performed. And you're looking at what kind of knowledge, skills, abilities, and personal attributes that you're looking at for that particular job role. This will help you identify the behavioral indicators effectively. And there is also a model wherein you can define the situation, task, action, and result. So basically, you are looking at a particular situation, what kind of situation you're looking at, what are the roles, responsibilities, and what are the context of your actions, and what are the challenges that you're facing in that situation. What is the task that is assigned to that particular situation? It will describe, the task describes what objectives are needed to be met. The action describes what action you would take in such a situation, and the result describes what is the end result. What are you looking at? If it is successful, then what are the learnings that you're getting? And if it is not successful, then also what are the learnings that you're getting? This is also another innovative method called the STAR method. So by doing this, you will be able to define the behavioral indicators very effectively for all the roles. Managers will be able to do that.
Okay. So
I hope I answered it well.
Yes, I mean that was a wonderfully narrated answer. I'm sure all the managers would benefit from the STAR approach. Hiral, you were also talking about a story where one company had more attrition rate than another. You were giving a relative example.
Yes.
So if you can touch upon the employee engagement program and the role of it to retain more of their employees. So how is it feasible for managers to measure the employee engagement? If it's getting better, is it getting worse? If it's when it comes to larger organization, they can obviously check about the attrition rates. But when it comes to smaller organization, how is it feasible for them to measure the employee engagement?
Okay, so when it comes to measuring employee engagement, before measuring employee engagement, you also need to understand that certain parameters need to be put in place so that you understand that you're actually engaging employees. Because once you know that you're actually engaging employees, that is when you will go ahead and measure the engagement, right? So for small organizations, some very simple things like understanding and checking on the wellness, the well-being of the employees, which includes physical and mental wellness, doing the onboarding correctly. So when the onboarding is done, when the person comes on board, the entire onboarding experience should be a very pleasant one, wherein everything, all the resources needed are available. The manager is there to brief the person, to welcome the person. All the resources needed by him are already present. This gives a very good onboarding experience. Also, giving feedback to teams in terms of performance and overall behaviors, and getting feedback from the teams is also very, very important. So all these are measures. Apart from this, I would also touch upon the point wherein large organizations look at a very strong R&R framework, which is rewards and recognition framework, which leads to the extrinsic motivation of employees. So if there is a good rewards and recognition strategy in place, this keeps the employees engaged. Senior management, senior leadership also needs to be made accountable for improving the employee engagement. Now, we talked about improving the engagement. Now we shall talk about the question, coming to your main question, which is measuring employee engagement. Employee engagement can be measured via certain tools like feedback meetings, like I earlier mentioned, one-on-one meetings with employees. This can be informal meetings in a casual kind of setup. But at the same time, the setup is also a private and safe conversation wherein the employee feels he comfortable to discuss whatever issues the employee is facing, if at all, and also to discuss the overall happiness at the work quotient. So the employee can also talk about, these meetings can be done by HR one-on-one with employees. The employee can talk about his manager or skip level manager. And skip level meetings can also be done by managers to understand whether the employee is actually comfortable with his or her own boss, direct reporting manager. So those meetings also can be done by the one level above manager. So that is one measure. Second measure is, you would have heard and everyone knows that exit interviews are conducted when the employee is on the verge of leaving. I would suggest, rather than conducting exit interviews, conduct stay interviews. Now, what are stay interviews? What are the interviews? Basically, you are talking to employees one-on-one and you're understanding that what is it that is motivating employees to in the company. What are the pleasurable factors? What are the plus factors that are motivating employees to stay in the company, to stay put in the company? So these interviews would give you a perspective, and you can conduct a simple one question survey which says, would you recommend this company as a good place to work? Or would you recommend the products and services of this company to be bought by people? A simple one question survey. So that also helps you in measuring engagement. And apart from that, short surveys, which I already spoke about earlier, 5 to 10 question surveys, which are pulse surveys. And this basically captures the pulse of the employee. This can be done on a regular basis. So these are the different ways to measure employee engagement.
That was the best possible way one could have answered this question, Hiral. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Abhimanyu, I mean, I have a last question from my end. If we don't have any other questions from the audience, I think we'll conclude the session then.
Okay.
The question is that, when we're talking about business continuity plans, I think it comes from the top level approach where the policymakers are involved. What role do the employees play in suggesting their convenience when it comes to or the managers for their team's convenience when it comes to hiring, making up these policies? And how can the leaders take an approach where everyone's point is included and it works optimally best for everyone?
Okay. See, this has to be conducted in a very open and fair manner. And the first thing that the leaders and the business owners have to realize that it's a plan that it will help them in case any kind of tragedy strikes, which no one wants them in the first place. All right. So we have to first change our mindset that we are not thinking of negative things, but we are just preparing ourselves in case such thing happens. And in case any such thing happens, such tragedy happens, how we are going to take our business ahead, what will be the roles and responsibilities of each and everyone, how the operations will be going ahead. So it takes in account all the possible scenarios. Coming to the employees, it's always a good idea to always take feedback from the employees as well, because when you talk to them to their the situation that they're facing on the field, All right. With the lack of communication, most of the times the leaders are not aware the kind of problems that the employees are facing. So the employees can give them really practical and realistic situations that they are facing on the ground day in and day out. All right. So they know. So they would also get. So what will happen is when the leaders really taking the employees' views as well, they would have a broader perspective of any and every situation that can happen in their business. All right, it's just like you are taking a imagining, you're running your imagination wild. You're considering each and every situation and making a separate plan for it. Some leaders might argue that it's a time-consuming activity which we really don't want to put in, and it's we are putting in extra resources and extra we are taking out our resources and people from their actual work to make such policies which we may never even face in the first place. But in the last 20 years, it has showed that you can never be really complacent about it, and you really need to be prepared for each and everything. So the leaders, the more the leaders take employees' opinion, they can have a informal session with them and just ask them, okay, tell me what's the biggest thing that can happen. So now the BCP also helps you in preparing your succession planning. I was going through your consolidated questions, and I think no one has asked this thing, that how startup leaders can really make sure that they can hire the best talent and also make sure that they have a robust pipeline of talent. So what this BCP does is it not only covers the tragedies, but it also takes account of situations in case any top leader, say department head, manager, or any CEO gets ill and they have to be on bed rest and they can't really resume work even from their home. So they have to consider scenarios such as accidents, illnesses, even deaths. Many companies, when we have talked to, we have seen many situations that suddenly out of the blue, one of their senior managers died due to some illness, heart attack, and then they are really huffing and puffing and they're looking and they're asking everyone for referrals just to fill that position ASAP. All right. So basically, not only covers your all these scenarios or the tragedy, but it also covers what if one of your employees is not present in that situation, and it's more important for your top level people, for the top management, for the top leaders, because to fill the leaders' shoes is not really an easy task. And it's always better if you can really find a leader from your existing organization rather than finding a new one immediately and replacing the existing person which has to go out of action due to any reason. So the benefits are more when you have any person from an organization becoming as a leader. One, he knows the organization very well. He has a tuning with all the his team members, his vendors, his top management. It becomes very easier. So this BCP won't only help you in mitigating the risk provided by the tragedies, but also in preparing up a robust pipeline of talent who can come and fill in the shoes of their leader. So for example, let me help you and explain the situation with related to cricket. So cricket में क्या होता है? There are 11 players and the coach and captain always look out for the players who can fill in the shoes. So they are opening batsmen and the middle order batsmen. They're always looking for the 5, 6, the people who bat at position number 5, 6, 7. Can they bat at 3 and 4? And they try to mold them. So they would send them sometimes, upper in the batting order when they are comfortable in a league position or in a tournament, and it doesn't matter if somehow they lose matches. So it also helps prepare the confidence of those people. So what if you have Rohit Sharma, Shikhar Dhawan injured? You have other players like say not Parthiv Patel, sorry, Rishabh Pant coming in or Hardik Pandya coming in, opening the batting or coming in 1 down, 2 down. So it's the same with the organization as well, which many startups don't really focus on it. So once you have comfort with your existing employees and once you have done the competency mapping of the skills and you know that the person has a potential to become a leader, now the competency mapping will help you identify a pool of people, all right, a pool of people whom you can groom for the leadership skills, and that's how you create your pipeline of people who can go to their leadership level, and that's how it will help you in automating your business. Many business owners go to many seminars to really understand how to automate your business. You learn these two tools, and more than 80% of your work is really done. Mohammed?
Hello, sorry, I was on mute. So,
Okay.
hi, Alicia is asking one more question. Alicia, if you can unmute yourself and can narrate your question, you can have a one-on-one discussion with Abhimanyu.
Hi, good evening. Am I audible?
Yes. Good evening, Alicia.
Hi. Actually, my question is for Hiral over here. It's regarding the core competencies. We understand the process of identifying the core competencies and the other sub processes. My question to you is, what are the general challenges one can face, and how can we overcome them? Because now we know what we have to do, but what are the things we can do to overcome the challenges?
Okay, so Alicia, the general challenges that we would be facing in probably the core competency or the competency process is that first of all, you need to draw up the exhaustive document with regards to competencies. So it is a little bit time-consuming process. So some businesses who may be in a hurry to probably start up, I'm talking about startup businesses or small or medium businesses, who want to kickstart the hiring process. Before the hiring process, they need to do the mapping for competencies. And also this is different from the job description, because the job description will give you the general parameters overall of any role to be performed. But as far as competencies is concerned, you need to really dive in deep. So you need to dive in deep into each competency. So this probably can be one of the challenges. However, as I mentioned earlier, that if you follow the KSAP process for each particular role, it is very, very effective because you just have you pick up one particular role. You involve the senior management and you understand what kind of expectations they have. So note them down, basis expectations for each roles, and make a guide with regards to that, and follow the knowledge, skills, personal attributes process and abilities, and accordingly you can draw up the document. So the process shortens, and definitely once the process shortens, you can use it for the hiring, and this will also reduce the recruitment cycle. So involve the senior management at the beginning itself and have a one-on-one discussion for each particular role, and this will definitely help you overcome the challenges in the competency process.
Okay.
So, Alicia, I think your answer has been well narrated by Hiral. So, if you don't have any more questions, we can move forward.
Sure,
So,
thank you.
Thank you, Alicia.
Welcome, Alicia.
If we before we go ahead, Abhimanyu and Hiral, or
Yes.
multiple people have been asking in audience if we can get the PPT so that they can go through the presentation and get to you one-on-one over LinkedIn.
Okay.
So if it would be possible or convenient for you, can please share the PPT with us and we'll forward it to all of the audience. Post this presentation. So
Sure.
I think now that we are running out of time, so I think we should conclude this session. I would like to yes, Hiral.
Bhavik, one more thing that I noticed on the chat is many people were asking about whether the presentation can be done in Hindi, because many of them were not able to follow English.
Yes.
So, Abhimanyu, what do you think? What are your thoughts about it, your inputs?
It really depends the kind of audience we had, and let's have a word with Faraz as well, because let's talk to Faraz separately once this session is over, then we can really discuss on this.
Okay, definitely.
Yes. Thank you, Hiral and Abhimanyu. So, once we, now that we go into conclusion, I would like to summarize this whole session that, we live in a very volatile and uncertain, complex and ambiguous world, a VUCA world, let's just say it. So, Abhimanyu talked about, a one for all plan, which can back us up and the organizations in times like these. So, he talked about the 3 Ps, the purpose, policy and the plans, which is just more than a contingency plan. So, contingency plan usually helps in, the business disasters, but when it comes to global pandemics like these, a BCP plan works really best for us. And organizations should, really put efforts to, draft these and articulate these presentations and communicate them very effectively to the whole of the management and the teams. So next we move on to the competency mapping, where we majorly talked about the people and personal management. We talked about the core behavioral, technical, functional, and leadership competencies. Hiral also talked about the proficiency level metrics, which was a very wonderful metrics. I'm sure all the HRs and in fact in general all the managers in the audience would benefit a lot out of this. And we also talked about the 5 competency models. All these models individually cater to have their own benefits. And when it comes to benefits, we talked about the strategic recruitment as one of the very major benefits when it comes to saving the cost and increasing the profitability of any organization. And the major impact of the competency mapping would be that maintaining a skill inventory, which not many organizations do. So maintaining a skill inventory makes the management aware about the forecasting techniques that they can involve to plan the recruitments ahead. And likewise, when it comes to talent management, we talked that competency mapping would really help to focus on all the A's that all the 10 pointers that we have, rather than focusing on the 2 or 3 pointers of the weaknesses that employees have. So there were some important models, for example KSAP, which was asked in which was catered during the FAQ and Q&A sessions, which talks about the knowledge, skill, ability, and personality attributes. Overall, it's a wholesome model I believe that managers should incorporate. Then the STAR approach, which most of the big organizations incorporate, and it was a wonderful corporate insight from Hiral. The STAR approach talks about the situation, task, action, and result, which is majorly used in project management as well. And when it comes to this VUCA world and the industry 4.0, I guess every task should be dealt as a separate and important project. And so and the most important and my favorite part of the whole session was when Hiral talked about the stay interviews rather than the exit interviews. Not many organizations do the the stay interviews. In fact, exit interviews are still trendy, but I highly doubt stay interviews is something that most of the organizations are still doing it. So I want to thank you both of the wonderful speakers that we had today. If it hadn't been you two, it would have been very difficult. I mean, for us to climb up the corporate ladder. I'm sure all of the audience and all of the members in the audience can, walk up to their managers and tell them that, okay, I'm industry ready. You can climb up, but, give me your position now. So, thank you for this. And I'm sure the session is going to help us with all our businesses as well. We'll share a summary email to all of the participants along with the LinkedIn handles of the speakers. If you missed out any point, you can talk to the speakers individually one-on-one on LinkedIn. Sure. And I would like to thank our audience, speakers, and our support partners, which are Startup Around, startupnews.fyi, and startup.ly. Our next webinar will be on coming Saturday, that is on 16th May. The topic of the same would be the ABCs of fundraising. So we conduct such conferences every week. You can stay updated on such webinars via social media handles. That is devex.work is our Instagram handle. And thank you so much, Abhimanyu and Hiral. We hope all the members to see you soon on the next webinar. And best regards on behalf of the whole Devex team. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, all of you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you, Hiral. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.